The thing all fans have felt for a while has finally been confirmed. The MCU is in deep doo-doo.
The following is a World-Class Bullshitters exclusive.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe has been one of the most impressive financial achievements in the history of cinema. From 2008 to 2019, the MCU was the crown jewel in Disney's Infinity Gauntlet of properties. But after a recent string of failures, disappointments, and oversaturation, the MCU finds itself in a precarious position. Insiders have been speaking out about Marvel's woes, and the news may shock you. But before we put our finger into that socket, today's video is brought to you by me, Jeff Hicks, and my graphic novel, Stealing Solo. Stealing Solo asks the greatest what-if question of all time. What if a group of disgruntled Star Wars fans kidnap Harrison Ford and force him to remake Star Wars in their basement? That, and a whole lot more, is answered in Stealing Solo, a Captain's Parody. Stealing Solo has been called Laugh Out Loud Funny and the greatest Star Wars parody since Spaceballs, and it's available now for a limited time only. Go to StealingSolo.com, which is powered by Shopify, so you get the reward-winning safety and security, and get yourselves a copy today. Once we sell through this limited backstock, I'm going back to the drawing board to bring you the sequel, which parodies Luke Skywalker's fall from grace, and finally the closing chapter, which I can't wait to get to, Frankenfisher, the Bride of Solo. And yes, it's exactly what you think it is. So folks, the only way to get that is go to StealingSolo.com right now, get yourselves a copy, and enjoy the greatest Star Wars parody since Spaceballs. Since Endgame, there has been a slump in superhero hype. The once dominant brand in entertainment has worn out its welcome. The last two phases of Marvel have fallen on deaf ears and a limp box office. Fans of the once triumphant Titan have turned away in search of new entertainment, while the remainder of the fans search for the answer, how have we gotten here? Thanks to some groundbreaking information from a secret meeting in the desert, we have the answer, and it's a big one. Sit down, folks, there's a lot to unpack here, so let's get started. This video has everything you need to know about the Marvel meltdown, courtesy of Variety. This past September, a group of Marvel creatives, including studio chief Kevin Feige, assembled in Palm Springs for the studio's annual retreat. Most years, the vibe would have been confident, even cocky, given how the premier superhero brand owned by Disney since 2009 has remade the entertainment business in its image. But this occasion was angst-ridden. Everyone at Marvel was reeling from a series of disappointments on screen, a legal scandal involving one of its biggest stars, and questions about the viability of the studio's ambitious strategy to extend the brand beyond movies into streaming. Hollywood really dropped the ball on streaming. I'll get into my opinions in just a minute. The most pressing issue in the discussion at the retreat was what to do about Jonathan Majors, the actor who's been poised to carry the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but instead is headed into a high-profile trial in New York later this month on domestic violence charges. The actor insists that he's a victim, but the damage to his reputation and the chance he could lose the case has forced Marvel to reconsider its plans to center the next phase of its interlocking slate of sequels, spin-offs, and series around Majors' villainous character Kang the Conqueror. Side note, we've been talking about Jonathan Majors since the news broke earlier in the year. So while we wanted to play the wait-and-see game, because innocent until proven guilty, Marvel, on the other hand, is concerned, and more information's come out about the actor, changing a lot of people's opinions on the thing. Let's continue. At the gathering in Palm Springs, executives discussed backup plans, including pivoting another comic book adversary like Doctor Doom, but making any shift would carry its own headaches. Plus, they have to introduce the Fantastic Four, which hasn't happened yet. Majors was already a big presence in the MCU, including the scene-stealing antagonist in February's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and has been positioned as the franchise's next big thing in this season of Loki. But this is where it gets interesting. Marvel is truly fucked with the whole Kang angle, says one top dealmaker who has seen the final Loki episode, and they haven't had an opportunity to rewrite until very recently because of the strike. But I don't see a path to how they move forward with him. I would love to be a fly on the wall at Marvel right now. Beyond the bad press for Majors, the brain trust at Marvel is also grappling with November's release of The Marvels. We all are grappling with the release of The Marvels. A sequel to the 2019 blockbuster Captain Marvel that has been plagued with lengthy reshoots and now appears to likely underwhelm at the box office. I wonder if they can blame the bigoted, racist, sexist fans this time. Or maybe they'll realize they just don't have a movie people want to watch. Time will tell. We'll find out in just a week. This is all an unprecedented turn of fortune for a company who has enjoyed a nearly uninterrupted string of hits ever since it started independently producing movies with 2008's Iron Man. Replicating that kind of phenomenon is never easy. However, the source of Marvel's current troubles can be tracked back to 2020. That's when the COVID pandemic ushered in a mandate to help boost Disney stock prices with an endless torrent of interconnected Marvel content for the studio's fledgling streaming platform Disney+. According to the plan, there would never be a lapse in superhero fare, with either a film in theaters or a new television series streaming at any given moment. But the ensuing tsunami of spandex proved to be too much of a good thing, and demands for churning out so much programming taxed Marvel's apparatus. Moreover, the need to tease an interwoven story over so many disparate shows, movies, and platforms created a muddled narrative that baffled viewers. I know it baffled this viewer right here. A lack of direction was a big problem for me. During Phase 1, we knew that everything was going to lead up to the Avengers, and after the Avengers, we knew everything was going to lead up to Thanos. Did every movie spend every waking minute tying everything together? No, each movie had a little crumb here and there that made you connect the dots, and it was exciting. But now, after the big payoff, you have to do something else, something bigger. And well, Marvel just doesn't know how to do that. Now this is interesting too because a Wall Street analyst has this to say. The Marvel machine was pumping out a lot of content. Did it get to the point where there was just too much and they were burning people out on superheroes? It's possible. The more you do, the tougher it is to maintain quality. Believe me, we know. They tried experimenting with breaking in some new characters like Shang-Chi and the Eternals with mixed results. With budgets as big as these, you need home runs. Well, the Wall Street analyst was very kind to say mixed results because the Eternals and Shang-Chi were very disappointing, and audiences did not take to the characters. That's why if you go to your local store, you're going to find clogged shelves full of Eternals and Shang-Chi figures, and they've been that way for well over a year. Audiences don't like those characters, and they never did like those characters. Hopefully Marvel's smart enough to never go back and try to use them again, because a team of Avengers that features Shang-Chi and the Eternals and America Chavez and all these other B-list characters is not going to move the box office needle. But apparently Marvel's desperate enough to open their checkbook, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The Marvels, which opens next week, will struggle to get the ball past the infield, at least by Marvel's outsized standards. The movie, which cost $250 million and sees Brie Larson reprising her role as Captain Marvel, oh boy, is tracking to open to $75 to $80 million, far below the $185 million Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness took in domestically in its debut weekend last year. Now, according to some new information, the Marvel's opening weekend projections are even lower than we thought. According to the Variety article, it's tracking at 75 to 80 million, but a few new sources have popped up stating that the film's going to open closer to 45 to 50 million dollars. How low can it go? Let's find out. Folks in the chat, tell me what you think the Marvels are going to open to. 50 million, 20 million, 350 and a box of crackers, who knows? We'll find out next week. But there's more trouble brewing for the Marvels, and this part is quite interesting. Directed by Nia DaCosta, The Marvels unites Larson's heroine with two other superheroes. But instead of seamlessly building on the success of Captain Marvel, this movie resulted in 4 weeks of reshoots, bringing coherence to a tangled storyline. The eyebrows were raised again when DaCosta began working on another film, while The Marvels was still in post-production. The filmmaker moved to London earlier this year to begin prepping for her Tessa Thompson drama, Hedda. If you're directing a $250 million movie, it's kind of weird for the director to leave with a few months to go, says a source familiar with the production. The Marvels has seen its release date moved back twice, too, once swapped in place with Quantumania, which was deemed further along, and again when its debut shifted from July to November, to give the filmmakers more time to tinker. But the extra time didn't necessarily help. In June, Marvel, which traditionally only solicits feedback from Disney employees and their friends and families, took the uncharacteristic step of holding a public test screening in Texas. The audience gave the film middling reviews. But Marvel has never been in the business of being average. Kevin Feige's real superpower is his genius, and has always been in post-production and getting his hands on the movies and making sure they're finished strongly, a source adds. These days, he's spread thin. Surprisingly, Kevin Feige declined to comment for this story. Now, the article goes on to talk about the shoddy visual effects from Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which we've made videos on earlier this year, so if you guys want to hear the full story, check that out. But they were rushed, and they rushed this film to release, and the result shows, and a lot of problems happened afterwards. We saw Victoria Alonso lose her job. Now, according to the official release, it's because she went to work on a passion project called Argentina 1985. But in reality, the people at Marvel were very upset that she allowed such a shitty-looking movie to get released. Sorry for the bluntness, but that's the reality of the situation. And it was so bad, in fact, that kids of the executives would make fun of it at the test screenings. So it wasn't just the angry comic book fans on the internet trying to troll Disney. It was the kids of the executives, too. And when Ant-Man switched release dates with the Marvels, it only gave the post-production 4.5 months. Now, according to this, Marvel films are known for coming down to the wire, but this level of unfinished was unprecedented and will be noted in the scathing reviews. Again, go back to ours to hear what we had to say about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Things were so bad, in fact, that the VFX artists were fed up with 14-hour days and no overtime, and they voted unanimously to unionize in September, sparking an industry-wide trend. The year 2023 was the straw that broke the camel's back, says former Marvel Studios VFX assistant coordinator Anna George, who appeared before a congressional labor caucus on October 19th to testify about the studio's untenable deadlines and working conditions. The pay and long hours at Marvel were the reason we had to start our unionization process. The conditions were completely unsustainable. Disney's top brass, including newly returned CEO Bob Iger, said to be apoplectic about the VFX troubles. 1 month after the Quantumania premiere debacle, the guillotine fell on Victoria Alonso, and we already talked about her a moment ago. But Ant-Man wasn't the only project affected by the VFX logjam, which had been evident for some time, with final effects for such Disney Plus series as WandaVision and She-Hulk Attorney at Law inserted after their streaming debuts. Which blows my mind completely, because most die-hard Marvel fans watch this the minute it drops, and then you go back and fix it afterwards. That's not a good trend. Why don't you just push these shows back? It's not like you have to release them at a specific date. You own the platform. But again, what do I know? I'm only world class. But some internal sources suggest Alonso was a scapegoat and point to the She-Hulk VFX issues as a symptom of a deeper rot, namely a lack of oversight on script development. Oh, here we go. In the original arc of She-Hulk, a flashback of star Tatiana Maslany's transformation into the Hulk character didn't take place until episode 8, the penultimate episode. But after Marvel's Brain Trust watched footage, it realized the scene needed to happen in the pilot episode so that audiences could see more of the character's backstory early. That means that the VFX team was tasked with fixing the mess in post-production. The so-called bad VFX we see is because of the half-baked script, says one person involved with She-Hulk. That is not Victoria, that's Kevin. And even above Kevin, those issues should be addressed in pre-production. The timeline is not allowing the Marvel executives to sit with the material. All while Marvel was bleeding money, with a single episode of She-Hulk costing more than $25 million, dwarfing the budget of a final season episode of HBO's Game of Thrones, but without a similar zeitgeisty bang. The August 2022 series debuted at the El Capitan Theater foreshadowed what was to come 6 months later at the Quantumania bow. The She-Hulk special effects were out of focus in multiple scenes. There are signs that the flood of product is leading people to tune out. I'm not prepared to call it a permanent fall, but based on the numbers that go with Marvel podcasts, Marvel-based articles, friends who do Marvel-based video coverage, all the numbers are significantly down. We can attest to that too, says Joanna Robinson, co-author of the New York Times bestseller MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, who is a writer and podcaster at The Ringer. I knew that name sounded familiar. The quality is suffering. In 2019, at the peak, if you put Marvel Studios in front of something, people were like, ooh, that brand means quality. That association is no longer the case, because there have been so many projects that felt half-baked and undercooked. As public criticism mounts, Feige is pulling the plug on scripts and projects that aren't working. Case in point, the Blade reboot, with Mahershala Ali, signed on for the eponymous role of the vampire. Things look promising for a 2023 release date. But the project has gone through at least 5 writers, 2 directors, and 1 shutdown 6 weeks before production. One person familiar with the script permutation says that the story at one point morphed into a narrative led by women filled with life lessons. Blade was relegated to the 4th lead, a bizarre idea considering that the studio had 2-time Oscar winner Ali on board. Now let's stop for a second and talk about that. That is the problem with so many modern movies. They want to take an iconic branded character, slap him on the title, but relegate him to the backseat so we can have 4 other characters take the lead and teach you something. A weird narrative led by women filled with life lessons. Folks in the chat, who is Blade? I'm going to give you about 5 seconds, or you can just pause the video and tell me who Blade is. But I'll tell you who Blade is. Blade is a half-man, half-vampire, vampire hunter. He's called the Daywalker. What story do I want to watch from Blade? What story do you want to watch from Blade? Probably a story where he fights vampires, not one where he's relegated to the background while 4 women talk about life lessons. Marvel is not the place to teach an audience anything. It's a place to entertain, and maybe if the writers and the producers understood that better, we wouldn't have so many problems. It's really a big Disney problem. With Star Wars, they want to teach you life lessons. With Marvel, they want to put you in your place and teach you life lessons. Why don't we put you in your place, Marvel, and tell you what's up? Stop preaching to the audience your superhero comic books. I understand that back in the day, comic books were allegory for certain kind of things, and guess what? That's fine. But we're in the modern day, and those comic books were first and foremost entertaining. You stop and cut out the entertaining part to give us the finger wag and teach us what we should and shouldn't do. That's what you shouldn't do. That's your mistake. That's why you've turned off a portion of this audience. They're angry. They're weaponized. They're whatever you want to call. They're just pissed off because you make movies about this kind of stuff, and nobody asks for that. Still, no one will ever ask for that. But I digress. Amid reports that Ali was ready to exit over script issues, I can't blame him, Feige went back to the drawing board and hired Michael Green, the Oscar-nominated writer of Logan, to start anew. Speculation around town is that the studio is looking to make the film, now slated for 2025, on a budget of less than $100 million, a deviation from Marvel's big spending strategy. Let's poke the bear. How come the Black-led film gets a small budget, but the White Lady film doesn't? Now, of course I'm saying that to poke the bear, but answer that question below. Why will Marvel spend more money on white women than black men? I thought all things were created equal. Let's continue. With Iger publicly acknowledging the downside of Marvel TV, the glut that diluted focus and attention, the keepers of the comic book empire are considering some dramatic moves. Sources say that there have been talks to bring back the original gang of Avengers. That would include Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson, who were both killed off in Endgame. Now, of course, bringing back a dead comic book character isn't an issue, but the real issue is the price, and according to this article, Robert Downey Jr.'s upfront salary for Iron Man 3 was $25 million. And he's got that sweet back-end deal, so that dude has made a ton of money. That's really why Tony Stark died, because they don't want to pay. But when he's Iron Man, those movies make astronomically more. Now back to Kang. What will solve Marvel's major problems? I'm just going to refer to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania as Ant-Man 3, because that's a lot to say for a title. So when Ant-Man 3's actor was arrested in March, Disney executives insisted that they could afford to play the wait-and-see game, given that Avengers: The Kang Dynasty wasn't expected to shoot until early 2024. But then Majors was dropped in quick succession by his publicist and managers. In April, other alleged domestic violence victims of Majors began cooperating with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Then, ahead of a key hearing in October, media outlets including Variety obtained a court filing that referenced a police incident in London involving Majors that led his ex-girlfriend to seek medical attention. Making matters even stickier, the ex-girlfriend also worked on Ant-Man 3 as a movement coach. And the incident took place while Majors was shooting Season 2 of Loki. Ooh, that doesn't look too good. Marvel wanted to play the wait-and-see game, and another one of their employees was allegedly abused by this person. It is a sticky, ugly situation. Let's continue. On October 25th, a New York judge denied Majors' motions to dismiss the case, which ensures that the actor will stand trial in late November. His legal team is attempting to keep some material in the case sealed. Domestic violence and abuse is no joke, but Marvel really screwed the pooch when it comes to this. I don't know how they can handle things so poorly. It's kind of an embarrassment. But again, we'll just continue on. Now this is interesting. A studio source noted that regardless of the actor's legal issues, Marvel had already considered moving away from a Majors-led phase because of the box office performance of Ant-Man 3, which struggled to make a profit. It gave people pause, given that Quantumania didn't exactly land, says a source. On October 27th, though, Disney removed another Majors film, Searchlight's Magazine's Dreams, from the release calendar. Recasting Majors is also an option, as Feige did when he replaced Terrence Howard in Iron Man 2 with Don Cheadle. In fact, Marvel isn't afraid to change direction. Even after making splashy announcements, Armor Wars was first unveiled as a series that is now being developed as a feature film. While the studio's push to adapt comic book Inhumans into a feature film generated headlines but is now dormant, an Inhumans TV series in 2017 ran for one season on ABC and was a massive flop. Then there's Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which was the only bright spot in 2023 for Disney. It was the biggest draw of the year with $845 million worldwide. But people noticed that it was directed by James Gunn, the guy who's now running rival DC Studios. The key to reinvigorating Marvel may lie somewhere in the superhero arsenal that Disney acquired during the 2019 purchase of 20th Century Fox. That deal brought several blue-chip heroes such as the X-Men and the Fantastic Four back under the studio's control. Fans are already geeking out about next year's Deadpool 3, which reunites Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine. And a reboot of the Fantastic Four slated for 2025. There are rumors and rumblings, though, that the film is going to focus solely on Sue Storm, with the rest of the Fantastic Four taking a back seat, which wouldn't be a surprise after the information about Blade was leaked. So don't expect the Fantastic Four to change Marvel's fortunes unless they do the Fantastic Four correctly and keep whatever bad writing decisions out of the franchise. Let's close this out. While Feige recalibrates, the rest of the industry is anxiously hoping that Marvel's best days are not behind it. Writing the Marvel obituary would be ill-advised, says Jason Squire, professor emeritus at USC's Grad School for the Cinematic Arts and host of the Movie Business podcast. Kevin Feige is the Babe Ruth of movie executives, and Marvel has the most profitable track record in movie history. No question. Now, while this article states that it's too early for a Marvel obituary, I believe it's too late, as we're in Marvel zombie territory. I gave you my takeaway from a lot of these points in the articles, but what I find interesting is that Marvel's ego got the best of them. It was their hubris that led to their downfall, and that proves that nothing is too big to fail anymore. While it is actually premature to write Marvel off permanently, they don't have a bright future ahead of them. The impending failure of Captain Marvel's The Marvels will undoubtedly have Marvel looking to place blame on certain sections of the fanbase, but that blame game will not lead to box office success. We've learned that, and they've learned that the hard way. And that topic may need its own video. More on that later. I love when mainstream media publishes pieces like this because it means it can't be ignored. It's not a rumor mill piece that some hack publication is stretching out a bit of information for. Variety gets the inside scoop, and the inside core of Marvel is rotten. People on Twitter will try to play this off as a non-issue, but they can't this time. Marvel needs to nail the X-Men. They can't take the approach that Blade almost went with. We don't need Marvel movies to be vehicles for the writer's personal views. They need to be supremely entertaining films with mass appeal. For the last two phases, Marvel was focused on that niche audience and counted on the brand name to do the heavy lifting. That didn't work, and it won't work in the future. Going back to the well of the classic Avengers movie will move the needle. Look how Spider-Man No Way Home got everyone excited with the return of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Robert Downey Jr. returning to Iron Man will get people excited, but Marvel has to fix the status quo of their universe to create one that audiences truly care about. The C-list teams and the Z-list heroes aren't going to bring in audiences. Marvel has replaced household names with heroes as exciting as household appliances. Phase 4 was a chore, and Phase 5 was a nosedive from that into borderline torture. I never thought I'd get to the Joker point where I just want to watch the world burn, but with Marvel, I'm nearly there. We've all been burned by Marvel in the past. Remember, folks, a bad movie is a waste of your time that you'll never get back, so you're justified about being upset. The MCU has stolen a lot of time from us. Sadly, the TVA can't bring it back. All there's left to do is look at the Marvels crash and burn, and we'll definitely be there for the wake. So what did you think about this Marvel House of Cards falling down? A lot of information was unpacked in this article, but I want to know what you guys think. You heard my comments in the video proper, but the takeaway I have is their ego got the best of them. Like I said, hubris is what led to their downfall. They thought they were too big to fail, they thought their shit didn't stink, and guess what? Most of their products were just that, shit. And a lot of fans suffered, but a lot of fans passed, and that's okay. I wonder how much of this has to do with Disney+. Is Disney+ the thing that really has hurt Disney's business the most? The box office is suffering, and people aren't watching these movies in theaters. Are they waiting for them at home? Knowing that Disney Plus is going to get these films in a few short months could drive a consumer where the budget is tighter to just skip and wait. They figure they pay their couple dollars a month for Disney Plus, they'll wait till Guardians of the Galaxy shows up, they'll wait till the Avengers shows up, and they won't buy the home video because they got the streaming service. And after a while and they don't watch the movie, they probably will cut the streaming service and forget about the film. That's the thing with streaming. It makes a lot of money, but it doesn't stick around in the audience's mind. I know personally I'll watch a movie on disc far more than I'll watch a film on streaming, and it has nothing to do with me being a physical media first collector. It's the fact that I see that thing on the shelf and I think about it. When it comes to streaming, there are so many options on these streaming platforms, and now I own so many of them that each month I don't really watch anything on streaming. I might pick up an episode of something on Hulu, I might watch an episode of something on HBO Max, but I'm not going back and watching movies the way I used to. I'm not going back to watch Avengers Infinity War a bunch. I'm not going back to watch Captain America as much. Because on Disney Plus, it's like, I can watch The Simpsons, or I can do this, or I can do that, or I can do a myriad of other things. And another thing that a lot of people don't like to address, at least in the industry, is the fact that once Endgame ended, it felt like the story was over. We were all satisfied that that was it. There was no more. The story had ended. But they wanted to milk it because that is Hollywood. And audiences, including us, well, we were tired of the milking. The milk's gone bad, the cow's dry, and there's really not much else for the Marvel brand. So folks, thank you for watching. I'll be back next time with more. But I guess before I do, I want to know what the 3 questions are. 3 questions for today. 1, how do you feel about the situation with Blade where they wanted to have 3 women be the lead and Blade would take a back seat to a film about real-world issues? That sounds like a dumpster fire. 2, what did you think of She-Hulk? And 3, how low will the Marvels make at the box office opening weekend? I'd say $3, but the price of one ticket is more than $3, so at least one person's going to go watch this movie. But my best guess is that the Marvels will open to roughly $60 million opening weekend and continue to fall on its face as the angry people on Twitter and the writers of the Mary Sue try to guilt you into going to support Brie Larson, but cat's out of the bag, nobody likes the franchise, and it's time to just let it go. So hopefully Cat Lady the movie doesn't kill the studio, because I'm looking forward to something with Wolverine and the X-Men. But folks, I'll be back next time with more. But in the meantime, be smart, be safe, be cool, but always be excellent to each other.